Good morning, and I want to thank everyone for joining this panel discussion. My name is Denise Bishop Earl, and I'm a member of Transform Practice Participatory Action Research Evaluation Team for this project, and I will be your moderator for this session today. And I am really excited to be a part of this amazing work, and I hope you all enjoy what we have for you today. But first, before we start, I would like everybody to get comfortable in their seats because I'm going to take you through a little breathing exercise and bring you into the room. So first of all, I want you to take a deep breath and notice how you feel in your mind, your heart, and your body, and how the world around you feels. Okay, so I'm going to start over. So I'd like everyone to get comfortable in their seats because I'm going to take you through a little breathing exercise before we start the panel discussion. So get comfortable in your seats. I want you to take a deep breath and notice how you feel in your mind, your heart, your body, and how the world around you feels. Take a big breath for the day you've had so far. And a breath for this precious moment that can't be recreated. Here you are in the cycle between the past and the future, choosing to spend this miraculous time in exploration of how humans, especially those seeking to grow liberation and justice, can learn from the world around us, how to best collaborate, how to shape change, how the Black-focused social prescribing project is making change. The Black-focused social prescription is a 2.5-year project which started in June of 2022. They are working with 4 community health centers to develop a social prescribing model that is grounded in Black and Afrocentric values and principles, with a focus on supporting families and children. They are asking, how can we make social prescribing culturally safe and decolonize aspects of the healthcare system to improve health outcomes for people of African descent in Ontario? So now let's go to our panel. Now what we're going to do to start the panel discussion is we're going to give each panelist 5 minutes to talk about themselves and the relationship to the social prescribing project. First of all, we're going to start with Francis Garway from Black Health Strategies. Francis? You're muted.
Why did I not know that happens? Okay, where do I do it?
Unmuted now.
Am I muted?
No, you're not. We can hear you now.
Okay, great. So thank you. And my apologies for that glitch. Technology never fails. My name is Francis Garwe, the CEO of Durham Community Health Center. But today I'm here representing the Black Health Committee of the Alliance, which is a committee that was founded back in 2018, precisely by the Board of Alliance, to be able to look at matters relating to Black health across the province as a committee of the board for the Alliance. So I know I have very few minutes to say a little bit about myself. One thing that you know, one job that I do very well, if you ask my kids, they'll tell you, great father and always, always taskmaster. So today I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be speaking a little bit faster so that I can give you a little bit of what we do. So a little bit about the Alliance Black Health Strategy, which is what brings me here today. What is this all about and what are we there to do? The objective is to address and reduce some of the structural inequities among the Black communities across Ontario for all member centers, for all members of the Black community across the Ontario province, but also to improve some of those outcomes through some of the work that we are going to be diving deeper as we speak in the next chapter regarding what makes sense. Some of the strategies provide, things that are short-term, long-term, which, as you know, nothing is able to be implemented without policies. So you hear us talk about that a little bit as we go on. Why Black Health Strategy? Black Health Strategy was released April of 2022 during the pandemic for precisely doing some of these things. Knowledge, in sharing knowledge in terms of inequity across racial disparities. Building that strategy was strengthened on how the outreach work is going to be, but in partnership with multiple entities. There's a Black Health Committee of the province. There are other entities like BPA or BHO to make sure that we are sharing that knowledge that's required to make sure that at least anything about anti-Black racism is flagged through some of the work that we are doing. What does that look like? We phase the work in 3 phases. There's phase 1 to talk about cultural adaptive policies, expanding the Afrocentric programs, representation from decision-making tables across the province, and promoting some of the community-driven work that makes the work meaningful. But also there's phase 2 to talk about mainstreaming of Black health strategy across the province, sustainability in terms of multi-year funding. How do we do that so that we don't do these things on the side of our desk? And also there's that supplementing of roles of implementing partners. How do we partner with the government? How do we partner with Ontario Health? How do the systems look in one direction so that we achieve some of the successes we have? Phase 3, how does health, race-based data address some of those things? So for now, these are things that I would leave for you hanging. We'll be coming back on the table to share a little bit more. So over to you, Denise.
Thank you so much, Francis. And now I would like to invite Sabrina Morrison, who supports Black-focused social prescribing, to speak to us. Sabrina?
Thank you, Denise. Greetings, everyone. My name is Sabrina Morrison, and I work at Taibu, which is located in Melbourne. And Taibu is a community health center, and we've been around for 15 years. And I am the Black-focused social prescribing navigator at Taibu. So I came to Taibu mainly because it aligns with my life, my mission, my own vision of my life, particularly this role. This role focuses on Black health in a non-clinical way, but it affects clinical needs that seeped in African-centeredness. So it's the African principles, African laws, African and Caribbean ways of living. And so my personal journey in life, I've been in the human services field for over 21 years. Started off in nursing, I dropped out of my first year and a half. And then I went into social services. Then I went into mental health, trauma healing, and now I'm here at Taibu. And a lot of my work outside of Taibu is working on the healing in Black bodies, healing in Black communities, mind, body, spirit, and emotions, using different elements like the earth, like the wind, like the water, just all these natural elements that are for free to help us heal. And bringing in genius across the city. I did the last 10 years of serving my community in Alberta. So I was the lead for the ACB caucus for a few years and done a lot of healing circles. So mental health, mental wellness, looking at physical wellness in an African Indigenous way is something that I've been doing, I would say, across Canada and even in other provinces. So being at Taibu with this project is a blessing in, I'm not going to say in disguise, because I think we just attracted each other. And also working with the other programs within Taibu. There's so much other social prescriptions. We've been doing this for years. Now we just have a fancy name and now we can measure it, right? So that's me and Taibu in a nutshell. I'm complete. And I'm going to pass this back to you, my sister, Denise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. And now I would like to invite Neil to share.
Thanks, Denise. Good morning, everyone. Greetings. Great to be here. My name is Neil Price. I'm the executive director of a Toronto-based nonprofit consultancy called Logical Outcomes. We've been around for 10 years, and we're proud of being a nonprofit because our main reason for existence was really to work with the sector to develop tools around evaluation, around community engagement, and data as well, but then share that work openly. So rather than taking a proprietary approach, we try to work openly and share what we're learning with our clients and those who are interested in our work in general. So I've had a mixed career in evaluation, in teaching, in research, and I've had the pleasure of working alongside communities, particularly in the CHC space over the last 15 years or so. And so we've been engaged by the Black Social Prescription Project to lead the overarching evaluation over the life of the project. And so it's been great to have that opportunity and to work closely with the different CHC sites and the advisory, and really taking a developmental approach to this project. And so during our panel discussion, I'd like to share some of what we've learned so far in our work, the process that we've undertaken. And I want to highlight the fact that, we are collectively thinking about this evaluation through that Afrocentric lens. I'm very excited by the ongoing work, and I would say the growing work among evaluators around thinking about evaluation from different perspectives, decolonizing evaluation, thinking of Indigenous and Afrocentric frameworks. And so this project has been amazing to work with everyone involved to think through, first of all, what is Black social prescription? What do we mean by that? And what kind of outcomes do we hope to achieve? And how can we distinguish social prescription from Black social prescription? What are the defining characteristics? And so it's been a real joy, and I look forward to sharing more when we get into the discussion. So thank you. Back to you, Denise.
Thank you so much, Neil. So let me just summarize. So Francis Garway, he talked about sharing the knowledge around their strategic direction, the three phases that are also part of it, the successes and what's to be covered to date in real life. Sabrina, she talked about the overview of the Black folks' social prescribing, the general experience of herself at Taibo, and the tools that she uses, and how that her work at Taibo is so amazing that through the healings centered way of focusing, she has really been able to bring the whole idea of Black folks' social prescription into fruition. And then we talked about Neil, who is really part of the evaluation piece through logical outcomes. He's bringing the whole idea of how social prescribing is for Black. Sorry, let me just reframe that. How Black social prescribing is a little different than social prescribing, and how do we define it? How do we look at it? What are the characteristics? And really bringing all those tools to fruition. So now let's get into the questions. And so we're going to call this a fireside. We were all sitting. Imagine yourself sitting in a fireside. We don't have marshmallows or hot dogs, sorry. But imagine, just put yourself in that imagination that whatever food that you eat at the fireside is there, and we're having a beautiful conversation with the people here. Okay, so the first question I'm going to ask both Francis and Sabrina. And the first question is, what are some successes you have seen with Black health strategy and Black focused social prescribing? Who would like to go first?
If you don't mind, Sabrina, I would jump because she's talking about pieces of strategy that will actually unearth some of the pieces that will come to the ground. So thank you very much, Denise, for that. Here's where I will start. Gone are the days where we build and hoping people will come. So some of those elements that we have learned through the implementation of strategy is how to engage the communities right from get-go and make sure that they are the drivers of the direction that you are going. Yeah, Sabrina, she will be covering next some other elements in terms of, even though we talk about social prescribing, it's not uniform to everybody. It needs to be really thought through as a tailored approach to individuals. And even within the fabric of all of us being Afro-Caribbean people of African descent, we have multiple fabrics of inserted kind of, pieces of culture nuances that will not necessarily be uniform to all of us. So thinking about that within the strategy is one piece that we have also made sure that is clear. And I would also add to say where there is an opportunity to make the work sink into the community. Also think about the policies behind that. How do the boards get engaged in that process? Because if you don't embed it in your policy, it will not stick on the ground. That's very important, because without that promotion, ambassadorialship, besides the policy framework, it will be an event. And as we know, you go to a Celine Dion show, you come back, it's done, right? How do you make it stick? So those are opportunities that we need to make sure that within the policy frameworks, it's there. And I will also further plug it in by saying, do not let the opportunities pass the institution by not helping with frameworks of helping to guide some of that work. Communities are ready. They've been ready. I think Sabrina said earlier on, we've been doing social prescribing before the fancy words. So how do you make sure that creating that from those elements continue to be fundamental pieces of how this is going to be, so that at least success could be seen? Sustainability is key. And I'll add that later on. Sabrina, over to you.
Thank you, Francis. That's brilliant. And thank you, Denise. So with social prescribing, I like to use some principles: as above, so below; as within, so without. So as above, we have the beauty, and one of the major successes is now we have federal government talking about Black health strategy, Black mental health strategy. Now we have provincial governments across Canada talking. Now we have communities talking. Now we have individuals and workers. So as above, so below, and as below, so above. So that's one of the major successes that I've seen in the last 10, 15 years, is having different levels of decision makers, of policy makers, people on the ground doing the work, people in the middle that are kind of influential to the policymakers and the community. And what particularly is my favorite, and I'm going to be biased here, is we're bringing in the spirituality and the African-centeredness and the decolonization framework, language, consciousness. And not only are we bringing in these fancy words, but in Black social prescribing, particularly with the CHCs that are involved, we're living it. So when we learn information, we understand information, then we know the information, but there's an embodiment of the information and living it through. So what does it mean to be African-centered when at the decision-making table? What does it mean to be African-centered when I'm working with someone who's homeless and has addictions, lives with addictions? It's the same respect and it's the same honor regardless. So how do I bring that? So that's one of the major successes that I've seen, is all levels are talking. It's not top down anymore, but it's down up. And the second thing I wanted to say is community is involved now, particularly around, and I know Neil's going to talk about this, is when we're doing evaluations, now we can actually say, well, we're not going to be a lab rat anymore. We're actually going to be involved, and we're not using rats. We're using our stories. We're using our experiences. We're using our ancient wisdom, our ancient knowledge. We're using, you know, the Ma'at principles, the principles of Ubuntu, the principles of Sankofa, bringing back sovereignty and how to be sovereign. So I love this work and I love the successes. And then the third point, success, is now we have allyship. And we have allyship in a way that we've never had before. So for me, that's a huge success, in especially, you know, in my 20 years of being on different tables. That's one of my, the spirituality and the community part, but the allyship that we've never had before. Even if you don't like Black people, you have to respect us now. Ashe? I pass it back to you, Denise. I'm complete. Thank you, love.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Now we're going to go on to the second question. And the second question is for everybody. What does culturally safe programming look like? And I think some of you have actually said this to some degree, but we'll start with you, Francis. And if you want me to repeat the question.
No, sure. I got it. You know, what does culturally safe look like? And here is where it's going to be very important. And, you know, picking on Sabrina's last comment, is it needs to be very much aligned to the individual in front of you. Because culturally safe for somebody that is under-sheltered, who is living on the street, might be different from Francis, who is coming in to access services through their cultural framework. How do you make sure that you apply the principles of harm reduction, meeting people where they are at, and the comfort of them engaging, so that you don't take the same framework that you have used elsewhere? So there's a couple of things that you will see in the comments that we are going to be making. It's always, you have to always think about, you know, being curious as an individual in front of the person. If you are not curious, you're going to end up with a lot of misconceptions that will now, you know, we talk about decolonizing the frameworks. It's actually going to put you into that colony mentality that people would take away from there to say, I thought you were coming here to open a door, but laterally you just came in to affirm what I thought this is all about. So now you have lost the audience. So make sure you are curious in listening. And Sabrina, when we are talking about, there are no liberates anymore in this work. We are using human stories. So the person who is in front of you is a complete textbook of everything you have imagined to read about. So instead of you coming, telling or rewriting the textbook, why not open the pages of the textbook and listen through the book? Let them speak. They have every chapter and verse for you, and it will make your work easier to be able to be of service to them. And I know for some of us, we talk in other different settings to say, be a servant leader. This is exactly the principle where servant leadership works. You show up, don't show up with knowledge compulsion. Don't come be compulsive to say, I have knowledge to give you. Open those doors to make sure that that opportunity is there. So I'll go to the second point. The second point is understand the context of the community you are operating in. There are multiple communities in which these programs and services are running. Not all of them have the same context. So when you understand those contexts, then the safety on who you engage, that would include partners that are in the space. That would also include some of the policymakers who are in the spaces. And that also includes some of the providers who claim to have been doing the work. But then they are still wondering how come they don't have the numbers even though they've been doing the work. So those contexts are mostly important to be embedded or researched before you walk in to say, I have a service to give. And I will share some of the things that we have learned through that cultural safety aspect. When we launched in Durham, the Black Health community, Black Health strategy, we had to do something that was done by others before, but we deliberately went there to involve folks who are like me, who have been in the spaces for quite some time, understanding to engage. These are researchers that have spent time in Chicago, South Chicago, in Texas, here in Canada, but they've also spent time somewhere outside the country, the Northern American continent, to make sure that they are actually coming in and bringing all that knowledge to how we were going to make sure that in Durham, what we are developing is exactly that. So we were able to gather the data, be informed directly by those communities on what exactly were they looking for and why was it important this time, and what will make them gravitate towards wanting to continue to share their stories and participate, which led us to even our first opportunity to run our very well attended at that time during the pandemic, well attended health fair, as well as the symposium to share the vision. And through that open symposium, multiple of the, I want to say, reaffirming recommendations came through through the ABC community, talking about, here's what we need. We need people that look at us who actually understand the context of what we do. Please don't send us your materials, because your materials are not complete of who we are. We need to tell you what those materials need to look like. And when you say you are ready to engage, be meaningful. Don't do this to check the boxes so that you get your funding. So all these things that were coming in are pieces that meant part of the strategies that we employed very well. So the SAFET is the listening, being curious, being involving and engaging authentically, so that folks will begin to respect the direction in which the work is going. So I'll pause right there. I know Neil will probably want to jump in here.
Okay, Neil, you're next. Go ahead.
Are we under the same question?
Yes. What does culturally safe programming look like to you?
Okay, wonderful. I'll try to tie it into the evaluation as well. So one of the things that we've really emphasized is a sense of welcome, right? So often with evaluation, and many of you will know this, it's externally structured, it's imposed, and grantees or organizations have to sort of just, fulfill what's required for accountability purposes. I think what we're trying to do with culturally safe approaches is to say, what is the knowledge that's already in the room? How can it be brought in to be considered? How can lived experience, spiritual experiences and beliefs be valued and centered? And how can we create a space that, when people engage in this project, there's a relational aspect to everything that we do. So there's that principle of I am because we are, right? Ubuntu. And so how do we keep that at the center of the work that we're doing? And when we drift, this is really important, and we've had some instances when we drift away from that, how can we feel as though anyone in the group can say, I feel that we've moved away from our objective, or I feel we're not living up to that principle or that idea. So, culturally safe also means safe to put your hand up and say, are we on track? Are we doing what we were setting out to do? And we've had that in this particular project. So those are some of the ways in which I would describe, culturally safe approaches. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. And how about you, Sabrina?
Thank you. That's beautiful. My mind's racing with, okay, pin that, let's tie it in. because it's such beautiful gems. There's a saying, you can't give what you don't have. So if the worker, if the evaluator, if the policymaker doesn't know how to create safety, kindness, integrity, truth, sovereignty, balance within themselves, they can't give that to their family, to their work, to their project, to anything. So culturally, and in African indigenous ways, we know this. We know the Ubuntu. I'm not my sister's keeper. I am my sister. I can't be without you. You can't be without me. So I got to take care of me so I can take care of you. And I'm not going to pour from an empty cup because it's a violation to self, the physical self and spiritual self, their soul. So culturally safe starts with the individual. As above, so below, as within, so without. So within me is going to be so without me. So I could only give what I don't have. You take an orange, you squeeze it. Are you going to get lemonade? You're going to get orange juice, right? Because that's what's in it. So if we don't practice integrity, being courageous and having that boldness in our voice, if we don't understand decolonization from our own inner thoughts, our own inner emotions, and knowing how to take self-inventory of self, how can we create a safe environment for ourselves even, or for somebody else? A. B, when I was in nursing, I remember when we were learning about the lymphatic system, the circulatory system, and all these different parts of the body. And we also learned, psychology and these different things. I quickly learned that all of these testings or these informations weren't assessed on Black bodies. So here I'm in a system, an institutional system, to become a nurse, to serve in the system. And I don't have any understanding of all body types, particularly my own. So now I'm going to go into this system as a nurse, which that's one of the reasons why I didn't complete it, because it's not my calling. But if I were to, I would have been assessing Black bodies with white consciousness or Eurocentric consciousness. So being safe is knowing not only your audience and their stories and their wisdom, but it's also understanding their bodies and what they've gone through. Because the four of us here, between Denise, Neil, and Francis, we have about close to 200 years of wisdom. Right? And compounded with lived experience. Yeah? So can you imagine if somebody comes in who's 70? I have clients as young as 21 and as old as 78. And they are my teachers. And because I go into it with this meekness, this humility, all of a sudden they feel safe. And there are things that they've shared that they need as a prescription that they would not have shared in other spaces, particularly, I'm going to say colonial spaces, because sometimes a colonial space may look Black. Yeah. So I'm not going to say European space or what have you. So creating a safe space, A, is knowing how to create that for yourself, because you can't give what you don't have. And then understanding the wisdom that's coming through and understanding the system and the different things that they may have gone through. And having compassion, especially for those who are anti-Black or for a system that's anti-Black, which is hard, right? Especially as a service provider. But now that I have compassion, I can have patience and I have temperaments. And now my cup has become a well, and I can hold more space to do the work I need to do to create that safety. Lastly, particularly, so that's macro, that's the umbrella. Particularly with this project, not only are we practicing African principles with the ebbs and flows, like the river and water, what Neil was saying is learning how to take a step back and move back and know that we're at the perfect place at the perfect time in the perfect way. But the other part, tangibly, I'm going to say, is we created an intake form. So the 4 sites, we worked diligently, and that's Rexdale, CHC, Somerset, CHC and Black Creek CHC. So the navigators, we work together bi-weekly, and then we work with the Alliance bi-weekly. So every single week, we are working diligently to create safe space. So that's the action. That's the embodiment part I mentioned earlier, the actual doing, right? And so we created an intake that has questions that typically wouldn't be asked in a normal intake in another setting. So it's having the person be safe, but putting these different types of logistics and these different types of framework and structures to create safety. I'm gonna stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have about maybe 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is ask the next question, and this will be for Neil and Sabrina. What is unique about or did I ask that question already? No, I didn't. What is unique about the evaluation process with Black folks' social prescribing? That word is sometimes. So this will be Neil and Sabrina. What is unique?
Sure. I'll be quick and then I'll pass to Sabrina. So from our lens, we've been, as I said, working to think about evaluation from a decolonization perspective. And so the uniqueness really is in adhering to a set of principles that try to live that out. So principles like ensuring that everything that we do and that's captured in the evaluation framework is designed to return a benefit, for example, to the community. So moving away from an extractive view of evaluation and thinking about what's the meaningful information that we can gather together, and that ensuring that that returns a benefit to those who've shared that information. I think Francis talked about context. You know, oftentimes evaluation does not adequately take context into consideration. So here, through the 4 sites, we recognize that we can't take a standard approach. Although we're trying to look for commonalities, we've also paid a lot of attention to the local context of each site. What are their needs around evaluation? What's going to work in that particular context? What's not going to work? What does engagement look like in each particular context? So asking questions like that and keeping those questions in front of us is one way that I would say this is unique. And then also, and this goes back to what I was saying about, evaluation. Traditionally, oftentimes evaluation is seen as a burden because people don't see the value in it. Oftentimes we need to get this to the funder. So one of the things that we're trying to center is the learning, the journey, and ensuring that we're also prepared to make changes when necessary. So sometimes we've developed tools and we've shared them with the advisory group, and we've had rounds and rounds of discussion to arrive at consensus. So allowing for consensus, for example, is something that I think is unique, even if it takes a long time, and it has taken us quite some time to come to consensus on different aspects of the evaluation. So I could go on, but these are some of the ways in which I think if you look at your typical approach to evaluation versus what we're trying to do here, you would see a distinguishing line. And I'll pass to Sabrina.
Thank you. I'll be short. Thank you, Neil. I'm so passionate about this project that it's beyond measure. So what's unique about this project, I'm going to go in and go without, is observing how ancient African principles, ancient African ways of living has now met policy or political structures. And so when I look 10,000 years of African history, we've had those structures. We've had court. The first court, the first university was all developed in ancient Kemet in Africa. So we've had order, we've had structure, we had policy, we had governance, we had those stuff. over 10,000 years ago. So what is unique about this project for me is to see some of those ancient ways repackaged with a little bit of colonialism, but centered in African centeredness, so that we can still achieve the outcomes and outputs of our funders. So for me, that's one of the uniqueness, because a lot of people, in my experience personally, think that this approach is new. But when we study history of order and structure and governance and policies and justice and all these different things, it's very ancient, very, very ancient Kemet, right? So for me, that's one of the uniqueness. And then the second, so that's internally what I'm seeing. But externally, what's really unique is and Neil said this, and our brother Francis said this, is understanding that the people involved are the experts.
Mm-hmm.
And allowing that safe space for the experts. They're scientists. The DNA memory goes back over hundreds and thousands of years. And there's we could talk about epigenetics, sociogenetics. We can go quantum. We can go there if we wanted to. But if we talk about just the practicality of this project and the uniqueness, is allowing the genius and the brilliancy of our people to come out and creating that safe space. And then creating a structure of evaluation that's also allowing them to share their story without it being construed to match an output or an outcome. Yeah? And then the other uniqueness, which I love so much, is seeing the various people excited. And I mean, whether they identify as Black, Caribbean, German, Asian, there's a lot of people excited about this framework. So when people are excited, that means you're doing something good, yeah? So for me, I would share some of the uniqueness is seeing some of the ancient wisdom, whether it's intentional or not, I don't care. I don't care about the how, I just know that it needs to get done. I'm happy. And to see from the top down up involved and highlighting the stories of our people in a decolonized way, right? So that's really unique.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Yeah. Thank you so much. So you pretty much answered the next question because it was focused for you. So I'm going to go to the very last question because we only have about 1 minute or so. And this is for Neil. Do you have any early findings to share from the evaluation process that you so far?
Sure. So far, we've really spent most of our time building the evaluation framework collectively, developing our tools, the kinds of questions, and thinking deeply about the outcomes. So that how to do that and how to do that in a way that is aligned with everything that others have been describing today, the spirit, the intentionality has been wonderful. And there's been a lot of learning in that. In terms of the actual empirical gathering of information, we've talked with link workers and we're hearing, that, and I think Sabrina talked about this, this is not new work per se. The CHCs have been doing this kind of work for a long time. What's, I think, exciting is to formalize some of this work in these particular spaces, to talk about it, like settings like this one, to be able to share more concretely what this work is and how we're, going about it. And also we're learning that it's not without its challenges. So finding good partners to offer Black social prescription can be challenging. I think Sabrina mentioned this, that there are Black-led organizations. There are organizations that have Black staff, but the spirit in which that organization or program is being led or delivered may not align with some of the principles that we've been describing. So representation is great, but we're thinking more deeply about what's the culture of that activity, what's the objective of that activity, and is it aligned with some of the principles we've discussed. We've learned about the role of the link worker, that critical role to build trust with clients. Sabrina's really described this. That takes time. It's a fluid role. It's a role that needs to be properly resourced. We've heard about the need for ongoing training and support to ensure that those link workers are in a good place. They feel confident in the work, in connecting clients to, social prescribing activities that are culturally affirming and culturally appropriate. So the need for ongoing resources and ongoing policy development around this is something that we've learned. And we've also learned that Black social prescription is really something that we are collectively defining. And so I want to come back to the word developmental. We've been very open to suggestions throughout the evaluation. We've pivoted when we've had to. I think I've said this. And so I would say the main learning from the sites is that while this is work that's been happening for a long time, the challenge of trying to define and communicate out about this work is ongoing. And there's no quick way to do this work. If I can end on one thing, the consensus building, the trust building, the safety that has to be cultivated demands that this be long-term work. This is not fly-by-night work. So that's something that we're also learning as we engage with the link workers. Our next step will be to go out and engage with the actual providers themselves, those who are actually providing the various prescriptions. And we look forward to that next round of work. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil. Now we have it's 12:04, so we literally have about 6 minutes for questions. So I'm not sure how we're going to do the question piece. Are people just going to put their hand up or write in the chat? Natasha, can you sort of give me some guidance on that?
So Denise, while the questions are being figured out, I want to add on Neil to make sure that we are clear, and also this is not hard work. I call it heart work because you have to have your heart into it to get it done. Neil and his team and many other researchers there. I remember my days during the time in Chicago when I was doing breast cancer work with Susan Komen Foundation. The biggest thing that you will see today on the face of the planet, Black people have been overly researched. And I say this with respect. I think most of you who are researchers, you remember the Tuskegee experiment, you remember the Botswana, HIV research, you remember the Malawi truck drivers, all those kind of testing and HIV drugs injected in them. So you definitely know, Neil, and many of your folks in your sector, you are going against a true tide when it comes to research and evaluation, because your work is hard to be trusted. But how do you make sure that relationships that you hold and the integrity you bring to the work and the authenticity that is married behind the work is true hard work, so that you can be successful? We can collect any data we need, but then in terms of implementing it with those that need to be at the forefront, will be a void room because of these other things that went before you and went before us. So let's be critically, maybe intentional when we make those decisions. Who do you need to be? And how also can you be vulnerable when you walk into those spaces to say, let's just make sure that we put this out so that you know what it is. That way, people now will be able to open their arms with an intention to be involved. And this is where, when I say it needs to be a work that is meant to be done in a way in which when you walk in, sometimes you're told, throw away what you have on your research. Let's give you something to work with, which works with us. Remember that context for every community, very relevant, very relevant. So I'll just position those so that I think questions are ready to come. Over to you, Denise.
Thank you so much, Francis. So let me see. Are there any questions? So you can type your questions in the chat, or you can put your hand up. I don't know how that's going to happen though.
Can I add something while we wait for the questions to come through?
Yes, please, Sabrina.
One thing that's coming to me now that I didn't say earlier, one of the uniqueness about this project, it incorporates a very holistic view: mind, body, physical body, spiritual body, and we look at the social body, which is the community. So the individual, the community, the world. So, and that's embedded throughout the project, throughout Neil's portion of the ballot. Like everything about the project is holistic. And I know in our Indigenous brothers and sisters, they might have the medicine wheel and different other ways that they do their own holistic approach. But this work has been very holistic. In and out. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Okay. Is this a question? Sorry for rushing over. No need. I think there's just comments. Making evaluation vulnerable and accessible is difficult, but yes, heartfelt work. Everyone has to show up with their authentic selves and co-design evaluation with community values in mind. That was Josephine Pham. Gary Bloch, he was saying, this is incredible work. One of the challenges posed by an expert specialized project like this is imagining how to translate this into more general health settings. Can you comment on how you hope this work will translate into the broader care world? Who would like to respond to that?
Let me jump first, then I think somebody will jump on it. So the reality of the situation for those of you who have not started this work or are not doing the work, and you have your heart into the right place, let me not deflect you by saying you are going to face a lot of roadblock and sometimes resistance in walking in. You could be walking into a Black room, Caucasian room, Indigenous room, you will face it. And let me just make sure that I put it out so that you are not surprised. Number one. Number two, make sure that before you do that, the context of the organization you are in and how that context is perceived by those you are trying to approach to bring on the table is clearly understood and directly shared with those that are working with you to make sure that they understand what it is that you need to do. And let me put the third point in there being, when you do this work, it needs to be supported from, I think Sabrina talked about top and bottom. It's no longer just the top down. You need to make sure that those that are in the governance framework of your institution, whether it's a registered charity or it's a volunteer community organization, be ready for those conversations among yourself before you take. Sometimes it's easy to take the passion out the door, and the passion is gonna meet a really aggressive behavior, sometimes that you never intended to, but it's coming from also a passion of wanting to see things happen. So don't confuse those, because sometimes when heavy energy meets, sometimes there's fire or there's water. So get ready for those things when you get out. But also for you, do not waste time trying to reinvent the wheel, trying to do multiple researches in those areas, because chances are there's already live data awaiting you. So reach out, get to the network, you get some of the readily available information you need to start from without paying a penny. Remember, we talked about overly research communities, especially in the GTA. I think, it's something not new, but each time when you go to bigger cities, you notice that it's there. How do you make sure that you get connected with the right bodies? And even if it's just a conversation, very crucial, because it will save you time, but you might also understand what you were thinking while you were sitting on your desk. It's no longer relevant. You need to scrap it and get a new information to go forward. I will just put those up there because they are crucial points to note, because you might be disappointed and never want to do this work again.
Wow. Well, I'm looking at the time. It's 12:12. So I don't know, you guys, this conversation is pretty strong. But I think I'm going to have to say that I would like it to go on for a little while longer, but I know that there's other things that need to go on today. So I really want to thank each and every one of you. You were amazing. Your responses were amazing. I learned so much. And I would like to sit down with each of you and just have a conversation, just a conversation about everything and nothing. And I was just totally amazed and thankful that and privileged that I had the opportunity to sit here and moderate this panel. You guys are amazing. The work that you're doing is amazing. I wish you all the best of luck in what you do and the outcomes of the Black Focus Social Prescribing Project. And so I'm going to say thank you to everybody who came here today. Thank you to the panelists. I hope you all have the best day ever and go out and enjoy the view. And there are questions in the chat. For those of you who didn't get your questions answered, hopefully they'll have a chance to answer them later on, because hopefully they're being saved in the chat. I'm not sure. Thank you all.